Cador's Pacific Region, podcast number 1A, Kamloops Update. In this episode, we continue our discussion of the Kamloops Cador's reports from Episode 1. I'm Brad Crockett. Joining me to discuss these reports is Praveen Premchandran, Chief Flight Instructor at Air Aviation. Praveen, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Brad.
The first report we discussed was a 172 that had an electrical failure. Flight Service referred to the runway as 27, even though it's listed in the Canada Flight Supplement as 26.
Yeah, while you were discussing there, you were asking why they'd mentioned that as being 27, and Steve had also mentioned that it might have been a typo. Well, what did happen is Kamloops changed runway numbers in September, specifically the 14th of September, and what used to be 0826 is now 0927. And we've had a couple of CFS additions since then, but they haven't updated the runway numbers on there, and we're still going by NOTAMs. All the more reason why we should be checking NOTAMs, I guess.
Thanks. I'll be sure to check the NOTAMs prior to recording future episodes. The other item in that report was a question about light guns at flight service stations.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up with Steve there. So if you are at a towered airport, which is Class D Delta or higher, then yes, you should be expecting light gun signals. But Kamloops being a Class E Echo control zone, flight service stations do not control you. They're an advisory service. And as a result, they do not carry a light gun. And I've actually talked to some of the flight service specialists at Kamloops and confirmed that they do not indeed carry a light gun at all.
Another report in that episode was the February 28, 2015 incident where a Air Aviation Cessna 172, registration Golf Hotel November Juliet, was exiting runway 26 ahead of an arrival of a King Air, which went around. Why did the pilot change their mind about where to exit the runway?
Yes, so this was one of my students, and he was a student pilot working towards a private pilot license. And on the day of this incident, he had actually gone out solo to the practice area to the west, so over the Kamloops Lake, and just practicing some upper air work maneuvers. And on his return back to Kamloops, he came in for the downwind of runway 26 back then, and he was coming in for the landing for the full stop. Now, flight service did mention to him that there was a King Air on the approach. They kind of suggested he could either keep it in tight and exit before the King Air or extend out and follow the King Air. And my student selected the option of keeping it in tight. But what happened was he came in with a little too much airspeed, and he wasn't able to quite stop by runway 0422 to exit there. And Steve mentioned there on your original podcast, it is more than a 90-degree turn. So, you got to be nice and slow to make that turn. And at that point, my student elected to just continue on past to Bravo just to make it safe. I guess that didn't give enough separation for the King Air to land.
Praveen Premchandran, thank you for your participation in this discussion.
Yeah, not a problem. I'm glad to help clear some of the things up here.
That's the end of this update. Contact the podcast by email at podcast@cadors.ca.